Hello everyone, welcome to Organic Chemistry with Professor John. Our main goal today is to name hydrocarbons, specifically alkanes, which are saturated hydrocarbons, only single bond, no double bond or triple bond. Okay. The first thing you want to do is, here's the summary of the rules. First thing you want to do is to find the longest continuous carbon chains. That's the first thing you want to do. Okay, you keep going, you cannot skip. Okay, second step is to number the carbon starting closest to the first branch. Okay, the branch is the one that stick out. Okay, doesn't follow the main chains. And then you name the group. The branch is also known as the substituents. You name each of them. And you also mention the locations, which is the carbon numbers, and that's called the locators. And substituents, when we done, we organize them. We put them in alphabetical order. Okay, if you have two of the same kind of substituents, you use di. If you have three of the same kind, you use tri. Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's get started right on the first one. Now, here is a molecule from the textbook. Okay, this is the line angle formulas. Notice that the carbon doesn't have to be labeled carbon. If it's not carbon, like chlorine, you write it out. Okay, so this one we would go from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the longest carbon chain you can find, and you got the branch. Carbon number 2, which is the Cl, and Cl is chlorine, but if it's a substituent, we call it chloro. Okay, if you went from right to left, in this case it would be 1, 2, 3, and that would not be good. Okay, because it's 3 instead of 2, so that's why this one is correct, but not that one. That's why you have 2 chloro. You change chlorine to chloro, and butane. Butane is the alkanes with 4 carbons. Okay. Alkanes with 1 carbon, which is CH4, we call it as a methane. 2 carbon, which is C2H6, we call it as the ethane, so on and so forth. Okay. Now here's another example. Also going from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 carbon. That's the longest chain. And your branch or substituent fall into carbon number 3, which is fluoro. Now, if you went from right to left, it would be wrong, because fluoro would fall into number 4, carbon number 4. Okay, so you want the closest to the first branch, and that make it a 3 fluorohexane. Alkane with 6 carbon is hexane, but not 4. Okay, so 3 is better than 4. All right, here's a few more examples. What if you have 2 substituents, right? And that's a tie. If you go from left to right, you got the first branch at carbon number 2. If you go from right to left, you got the first branch, also carbon number 2. But now you're debating, okay, it's a chloro versus fluoro. Which one take the precedence, right? Then alphabetical order coming to play, and that's chloro. C comes before F. That's why you go from left to right. So that's give you 2 chloro, 3 fluoro, butane. But if you mix up any other way, it will not be correct. Okay. Here's another one. You go from left to right as well. It's not always left to right, and this is just the case that you go from left to right. You go 1, 2, 3. So you got the first branch at number 3, 4, 5, 6. If you go from right to left, 1, 2, 3, your first branch is also on carbon number 3, but that's a methyl. Remember, if there's 1 stick, that's a methyl. That's 1 carbon substituent, which is a methyl. Okay, that's a bromo. So the bromo, the B goes before the M, so you got 3 bromo, 4 methyl hexane. And you got a fancy substituent here, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a tie, but chloro versus third butyl, that's a carbon with 3 methyl, that's a third butyl, tertiary butyl. And you count, you based on the B, not the tertiary. The tertiary just tell you what kind of branch it is, okay? It's a tertiary. So that's a 4 tertiary butyl, but you based on the B, so the B goes before the C, so that's why you go this way. And it's a 5 chloro, and that's an 8 carbon butane, 8 carbon alkane, so that's what we call octane. Okay. Now for cyclic alkanes, if you only have one substituent, you don't have the number because it's going around anyways, right? So it's always going to be 1 right there. So for example, methyl cyclopentane. And if you have a chloro, then this is chlorocyclohexane because it's a 6, okay, a carbon enclosed structure. Now if you have 2 substituents on the same carbon or different carbon, you do have to label them, okay? In this case, you label number 1. So at number 1, we have 2 substituents, and they're both the same kind, and they both have 1, 2 carbon, okay? 1, 2, that's an ethyl. So you have 1,1 diethyl cycloheptane because the ring has 7 carbon, and that's heptane. Now you have 2 different substituents. You have fluoro versus iodo, and alphabetical order, fluoro goes first. So you put fluoro number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, you don't want to go the other way because it's too far. So 1 for fluoro, 4 for iodo, and cyclooctane because there's 8 carbons. Okay, so again, for cyclo structure, which is the enclosed structure, alkanes, you don't need numbering if it's only 1 mono substitute. You don't need numbering. But if you have more than 1, 2 or more on the same locations, same carbon, or different carbon, you have to label. You have to put the numbers on it. Okay, and you always start with the number 1, the lowest numbers. All right, guys, that's for nomenclature of alkanes and cycloalkanes. And then in the next lecture, we'll go over more examples. Thank you for watching.